Uh, so okay, I kind of want to just talk about this the invention of, say, new terms and how they are kind of understood. So post independence, there is like a shift towards this idea of modernity, right? Like the first 5 year plan or till whatever time we have this, it's about, okay, now Chandigarh gets made, and now we are moving towards a certain sense of an idea of a modern citizen, and there are references being taken from all over the world. And this is being the term that is being used is that we are urging our citizens into modernity, and this is for the development of the country, right? Now in your line of inquiry we see, and then after, of course, 92, there is a second stage of, say, development of the country in terms of or especially in terms of Mumbai as a city, this the emergence of the entrepreneur and things like this. Do you think that the way we've understood development vis-a-vis your line of inquiry, the term development needs like a very serious reconsideration in terms of language? And what are some of the things that we should consider while we are redefining or trying to build a sort of new language of development as a term?
Yeah, it's great. This goes all the way to the World Bank, actually, development economics and all of that with
Yeah.
Amartya.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right that the idea of development, and it's not only post independence,
Yeah.
but there's a colonial sort of imprint, in
Yeah.
the way we imagined, through kind of modern structural frameworks of thinking of space, of thinking of systems of knowledge. And absolutely right that you require completely different frameworks of thinking, and so some of the examples that I gave you were really about rethinking those frameworks. What we
Yeah.
consider development, may in some ways create very, very deep kind of problems of polarities and other things that happen. And instead, if you look around closely, life is led in many more ways than through those development frameworks. And that's precisely what we were rejecting 15 years ago, when we said, we're working with through conventional logics of the discipline. You realize that you were already asking, you were answering things that you already knew. You were working from the limited frameworks of the imperatives of that discipline, right? So you were really kind of looking at these were creating more problems. But again, the field became really, really important to kind of come back and teach you that there is a problem of thinking like that. That what you need to change is the framework of thinking itself first to begin with. Because even when, we were also working in the kind of space of activism, even there, it was really the developmental logic that kind of worked, where you were working with a problem and solution, whereas the problem was somewhere else and the solution was somewhere else altogether. So I think that kind of requires a complete displacement. You need new frameworks of thinking to begin with, because otherwise what happens, the city becomes a project. And it's not a project actually.
Yeah.
I'd like to also go back to something you quickly mentioned just before we started recording today, and I inadvertently, or obviously on purpose, I knew what I was doing, said the word informal, and you said you don't like that word, formal and informal. Could you elaborate for our audiences? I'm really curious, because this is also, again, the development and sort of the thrust for economics. How do you attract capital kind of a problem, the formal and the informal?
Yeah. Again, precisely the problems of saying something is informal and something is formal, because within what we understand as the formal, things work very informally. Things, financing networks, who knows whom, how things move, how money moves, everything works through very, very informal ways. But it's only certain things that you would call formal and certain things that you call informal, which is why I hate the word informal, because in some ways it creates these deep binaries. It validates some ways of working and invalidates other ways of working.
Yeah.
Everything that we are we're wearing clothes that have come from certain spaces, certain kind of transactions, everything that our lives are as informal and as formal as anything else, right? So I mean, I hate like the conversation that we are having, from where these kind of devices have come, all of that are implicated in series of flows and forces which are impossible to delineate as formal and informal. So I mean, I kind of hate that word, because then you only kind of validate certain things, and certain things become in some ways illegal. So I really sort of that's instead you start looking at what are the forces through which things are produced and made. And again, it's really again coming back to the structural logics, right, of modernity in some ways, right? It's the modern plan which made things informal, I would say, right? Humanity always built their homes, they built spaces, they built cities, right? It's the modern plan when it came and superimposed itself on this territory. That is when certain things were called formal and informal, legal and illegal, right? So those also come from certain epistemes of thinking, right? Certain epistemes of knowledge. And that's important to understand, right? Because otherwise you take things for given, and very kind of easily put things into certain kind of categories of kind of knowledge.